Good afternoon, welcome. Today is Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. It's 4:01 p.m. I'm Shannon Gascoigne, Chair of the Amherst School Board, and I will call this meeting to order. Yeah, Victor, the owls are blinking. Are we okay?
Yes.
We're good. We're recording.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic.
It says they're paying attention. They're like,
Yeah.
Chris, that's amazing.
Okay, so will all who are able please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you. As I said, my name is Shannon Gascoigne. I'm the Chair of the Amherst School Board. I'm joined by my fellow board members, Mr. Jason White, Vice Chair, Mr. Brian Gould, Secretary, Ms. Terry Reed, and Dr. Greg Fritz. From the SAU, we have Superintendent Barry, Mrs. Administrator Facey, Mr. Chamberlain, Dr. Murphy, and Mr. Chipperoni, Dr. Wilkins. We also have our tech support, Victor, attending with us as well. So thank you all for being here. Our first order of business on our agenda is to affirm the agenda. So does anyone have any questions? This is an off-cycle meeting for us. This is not a regular business meeting, therefore we only have a few very focused items on our agenda this afternoon. Superintendent Barry did call this meeting, did request that I call this meeting in order for us to discuss a few items which you see on your agenda. So does anyone from the board have any questions on the agenda? Great, then I will move that we affirm the agenda. Seconded by Ms. B. All in favor? Okay, great. We are aligned on our goals for the afternoon. We'll begin with a public comment. As a reminder, if you are a member of the public attending in person and would like to address the board, you may move to the seat in the center of the room, state your name and town of residence, and you will have 3 minutes. Would anyone attending want to address the board?
Hello, Michael Almeida, Amherst resident. With the topic tonight, we're discussing the future of the Wilkins project, and I really just wanted to state a couple things that I've heard from the community over and over again. First, I'm speaking of as a member of the community, not as a member of any of the committees that I'm on. We need to evaluate all possible options here, not just a few, not just a reduction in size of the current project, but really evaluate all the educational space across the district. If we don't do that, the community will continue to have questions and we're not going to get the 60% that we need. I do feel that this entire process has been rushed. We're now at a time where we're trying to decide what the future of the project is and not much work has been able to be done or accomplished. I'm not gonna question specifically why or present a reason why. I think we can do a post-mortem on that. But I think it is super important that we understand that we need to answer the questions that have been asked year after year after year. And if we just rehash the same plan with a slightly lower price tag or a smaller new build, I just don't think that meets the mark for the 60% bar the community is looking for. So highly suggest that as we discuss things, we need to consider all educational space. We need to consider more options than just a reduction in the current plan and really open up the aperture to more creative problem solving to help solve the issue. I want to share. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Almeida. Would anyone else attending like to address the board this afternoon? Okay, seeing no one else in person, we will have another public comment at the end of our meeting. Is there anyone online who would like to address the board? If you're online and would like to address the board, just raise your virtual hand. Should have said that. And you'll be moved to panelist. No one? Okay, great. Well, then we will move forward. The first item on our agenda is a Christian Hill discussion. So as you all are aware, we have there are some developments happening in our community that are municipal side of folks are working on things, and we have received interest from the community. Superintendent Barry has received letters from the community. We received a letter from the community expressing an interest for the school board to, or the superintendent to make some sort of statement on the impact to our schools. So I will turn it over to Superintendent Barry to share with us what he has shared with the folks on the municipal side in terms of impact to the school.
Yeah, this is a topic that's been going on for many years, and then over the summer, spent some time with, Lincoln Daly, the new town administrator, met with some people who had some community members who had some strong feelings on it. Received a kind of a letter and from multiple community members asking for the superintendent's office to weigh in on this topic. It is a topic that was not new. So back in 2023 interim where superintendent Mr. Chamberlain weighed in initially and talked about some of the concerns that we would have. And I feel very strongly that at the end of the day, this is a planning board and Amherst Select Board authority to decide what's in the best interest of Amherst. I will, as you see, continue to reiterate, my, feelings and perspectives on the topic. I've attached some draft notes, like a letter form that, I've shared out versions of that with Lincoln Daly, with other community members, and, focusing on being able to handle the enrollment that it could project, potentially bring. We talked a little bit about the reality of what happens to the traffic and the construction vehicles and what that impact looks like. And I think that's where, as is the superintendent of SU 39 in the Amherst School District, that's all I can do is provide the perspective and the impact that it would have. And I think if people are trying to, have the school superintendent weigh in more strongly, I don't think that's the place of the superintendent. And but I have communicated, my thoughts and concern on it. I appreciate all the people that I've met. And I just want you guys to hear it from me first. All right.
Does anyone have any questions for Superintendent Barry?
Moving off this topic after
We will, yeah, because we'll move after questions and, we can have discussion. So this is the time for discussion on this topic. So if you have a discussion point or a question, now is the time.
Yep.
Ms. Deeb?
Sure. No, I just want to say, I appreciate us having it on the agenda because it obviously does affect us. I think that it shows that in our current plans, we have a slight bit of flex space that future proofs us to some degree and gives us the ability that if we have a particularly large contingent or something that comes down, that's one of the reasons that's built the plan, that you have everything we know of right now and a little bit more that can either be used for group work or to be extra classroom. And so I think this just highlights that having that kind of thoughtful planning where it's not just for every student we know of this minute, but that we have some capacity for growth is really important because we know that at least some level of growth is coming to our community.
So just a point of clarification, when you say in our plan, you're talking about future plans, not our existing.
Well, and
I just want to clarify.
what we put up to the ballot so far, one of the things that has been in our previous plans we put forward is having a little bit of space that could be used two ways. It could be used as either classroom space or as space for group work until then. And so I think this just highlights why that's so important. And I think that the other things, like anything else, we deal with it as it comes along. So we know that we're keeping an eye on it, we're talking, but I also like the fact that you point out that we control what affects ours and we're affected by it, but we can't tell them whether or not they can approve a building project because those are their rules and that's those decisions. And so for us to go say, don't you dare let them build that, that's not appropriate for us. It's not our business. It's our business to say, how do we deal with the aftermath, whatever those decisions are. And so I'm happy to know that you've been having, and I knew that you did, but I'm glad that you're addressing that you've been having communication, so we know it's coming our way. Probably in some aspect, and that as we get more details, that we'll deal with it as it comes. So I appreciate you being on top of it and communicating that. Mr. Gould?
I was just gonna kind of piggyback on the capacity thing. I think it's great, but one thing I just want to point out, I'm gonna take this platform and use it anyway. November 18th at 7:30, so Eagle High School, there will be a meeting about this project. So as a member of the community, I'm gonna be there. I think it's important that a lot of us go just to hear at least what's there. Especially being on the school board, because I think it should help shape our decisions. Not only is there the Christian Hill project, we have the one over by the golf course, we have the County Road now. There's a subdivision that's this property is gonna be subdivided now. So they're popping up all over. So the capacity of the can is very important. And we have a few select who keep mentioning that we have capacity and we can, use existing. I want to make sure that we use our voice and our platform to say that. So I get your point of view, Mike. I really can't go out on a soapbox and fight that fight, but if we can.
Anyone else? So I just want to, I'm just curious because I know that Chief Champoli has also sent a letter to the planning board regarding the traffic and safety concerns with, sidewalk, narrow road and all of that. So it sounds like your communications have echoed a little bit of that. Is it your intention then to send it in a formal letter like the chief did? Is that what you were thinking of this?
That would work with, County Commissioner Lincoln Daly, that's been to communicate this out. And Chief Champoli's role was different than the superintendent's.
Absolutely.
But the last thing, I've reviewed all the materials that were given, transformation and fiscal impact study, and talked with Lincoln, talked with community members, and I feel like the response that you see kind of a draft of hits upon the things that are in our purview and our perspective, and I think it accurately reflects the reality of it on the schools. And so at the end of the day, there's expertise and authority of other boards. So I just want to respect that.
On the municipal side and their liaison role that you that we should be aware of that you've heard.
I mean, I'm liaison, I'll stay my role and I'll just go between two parties. I don't have anything to.
Yeah, but we have a fix.
I have not been asked to
Yeah.
comment on this at all, or to provide information about this to the head's office.
Okay. All right, then. If there are no further questions or discussion points from the board, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. Next steps, Wilkins Building Project, and for that, I will turn it over to Superintendent Barry, who requested.
Yeah, so, for us, as the SEU, it's our job to provide information and guidance. You can put it up, we'll get to it in a minute. Information and guidance to the school board, on kind of the information they need to be able to make decisions. And the purpose of this meeting is for us to provide information to the Amherst School Board based on our work as the SAU group, all the people here with me, Bob, Amy, Steve, Kathleen, and Peter, as it's relevant to the Wilkins project. And it's clear, for us, after working with the Amherst Board, working with the community over the course of the summer, building and grounds, the people who attended the listening session, that, we have to continue to provide information and guidance to the community. And at the end of the day, we wanted to provide options. And so the question that, we hear, there's a lot of tension between the urgency to repair this and the process to repair it. And there's a lot of different stakeholder groups who bear a variety of opinions on how to get to this solution. At the end of the day, it's a dilemma that we have to find a solution to. The people who are sitting to my left are in a position to ultimately drive and have more influence over that solution than other stakeholder groups. So I think as superintendent, it's my obligation to provide you as your employee, my take on this. And so I'd just like to read a statement, and I'm going to follow it up with just a very brief slide show. And I think the outcome, as we move through this, is you do want us to continue to gather this information so the board can make the decisions that they need to make. And so that's the outcome of this meeting. And so This afternoon marks the first time a superintendent ever that I'm bringing forward recommendations for the Wilkins project. I assume the first year, the project was well into play. It was, the project. I was first and superintendent, and we rolled that, and I wasn't heavily involved in that process. The second year, because of the 54%, there was an aspiration, collective decision that we were going to move that project forward to the vote. So we coordinated and provided efforts to educate and inform our community members and partner with the board on their initiative. This year, after it not passing, I think, there's some real reflection that needed to take place. And so something that kind of was compelling for me is, on October 15th, we had more than 150 community members that joined us for a district-wide listening session. I refer to them as attendees. I don't think it's a whole reflection of the community. However, those are the people that came out. Those are the people that took the time out of their day. So I think we have to respect that they came. We're deeply grateful for the strong turnout, the thoughtful and respectful engagement throughout the evening, the themes that emerged, reflect both the strengths of our district and the opportunities ahead as we continue to work together to support our students, staff, and schools. For me, I've said this over time, there are key takeaways from that session. The safety of the current Wilkins school is a universal concern. And on October 25th, we addressed how we were going to move forward with the immediate short-term concerns. But moving forward, safety is a significant concern for the people in Amherst. The cost of any renovation or construction project was a factor for some members of our community, and I would consider many, especially the people who may not have school-age children that, are very much on a fixed income and reside in Amherst. There was a strong sense of urgency balanced by a shared desire for a well-vetted, cost-effective plan. The continued use of trailers or portables was viewed as unacceptable by nearly every attendee in every room that came. And I think we need to try to figure out how to address that. Discussions about grade configuration focused on two key areas. Here in the grade configuration in K5, whether it's a K5, K4, or 1-4, and maintaining a clear, distinction of what middle school and high school students' experience looks like. Most participants expressed support for a March 2026 vote, provided the plan is demonstrably improved, affordable, and well communicated. And I want to pause there for a second. That was the vibe when we left here. Throughout the rooms, there was more of a consensus but at the same time, I want to talk about it demonstrably improved, affordable, and well communicated plan. It had to be different, had to be well thought out, had to be intentional. And so I think our job is to provide the information so the board can make a decision if they want to have a project go on the March of 2026 vote, or do they want to have something go at a later date, 2027. That is not for anyone on this side of the table to determine. All we're going to do is provide you information, and then we at work for the Amherst School Board. So taking into that account, we brought on an OPM to kind of help us because they're experts. And so what we heard during that session, the feedback from the school board, the building and grounds committee over the summer into the early fall, the conversations I've had as years of superintendent, solicited and unsolicited, it is clear our community wants a project that generally enhances the educational experience for students. And I'll go back to that is my priority, to enhance the educational experience for our students, families, and staff of the Amherst School District in a cost-conscious and efficient manner. People who know me, I take very seriously, being the steward of taxpayer dollars, being fiscally responsible. As superintendent, my goal is to deliver that improvement while reducing overall project costs. This afternoon, I'm recommending that the board consider two potential timelines: March of 26 warrant or a March of 27 warrant. You have to do things differently depending on what you want to do. So in order to keep March of 2026 on the horizon as a potential thing, I believe that a 1-4 configuration is worth board consideration. Not saying that's what you have to do. I'm just saying, based on where we're at in the timeline. Some may want to consider a project that includes grades 1 through 5, or K through 5 at Wilkins. But I will tell you, the 1 through 5 project has failed twice in the last 2 years. And I think we have to recognize that. And I'm not sure bringing back that same grade configuration, that similar cost, without enhancing the educational experience, is in the best interest of the Amherst School Board. But at the end of the day, we're the superintendent, we work for the school board. We recently brought an owner's project management firm, Trident. Trident stated that getting 2 plans conceptually designed and costed is the maximum of their capacity to work with architects and numbers of CMs to price check and cost break this in order to get something on a March of 2026 one. That is their recommendation to me. So I know there's conversation where people want to explore 3 or 4. What they're telling me is you have 2 to realistically. And if you want to, do something different, that's, we can talk about that. Ultimately, the designs and the time and choice rest of the board. We have 2 primary options to consider if March of 26 is something this board wants. And that's all I'm trying to do here tonight because of the timeline. Renovate and expand grades 1 through 4. I think if you go with this plan, it retains and reuses as much of the existing structure at Wilkins as possible, with additions to meet current educational and safety needs and enhance the educational experience. A build to suit, this option offers a purpose-built design with efficient circulation, learning spaces tailored to support today's instructional practices and students' needs, and is new. I think those are realistically from where I sit. I'm not saying it's the only option. I'm just saying from the perspective and where I have all the conversations I've been in, all the meetings I've been in, and the Trident and Banwell and different CMs, that's where we are. Both options aim to make the most efficient use of space across Amherst and the SAU 39. This would take into account future projected growth for long-term planning, as we just kind of touched upon. By removing grade 5 from the Wilkins project, we can better balance capacity and the resources district-wide. Over the past 3 years, we've developed a 2-tier middle school program at AMS, comprising of an upper and lower middle school, which has proven effective in support of both academic and developmental outcomes for students. For that reason, my sense of urgency to move 5th grade back to Wilkins has evolved. And I think the people here, it's evolved for them too. Because we are making, real growth in changing the practices and changing the experiences for 5th and 6th graders, and then 7th and 8th graders. And then, never mind, it also talks a little bit about being efficient, right, with our space in Amherst and SU 39. I understand this represents a change in previous thinking. However, I believe that designing a building focused on grades 1 through 4 with the dedicated cafeteria and gymnasium and the flexibility to expand in the future positions Amherst well for the long term. While no project is perfect, this approach eliminates the use of trailers, provides appropriate and safe learning spaces for our students and staff, and supports our shared vision for educational excellence. To ensure the board has all the information necessary to make an informed decision to move forward with the March 26 warrant, I recommend the following timeline. And I've already credited the Amherst board. You have met so many times. There's so many subcommittees. There's 3 different negotiations going on. It's wild to ask more of you, in my opinion. However, we're gonna have to ask more of you to make informed decisions. So we have this meeting today. We have the 14th Building and Grounds meeting. We have our regular scheduled meeting next week. We have another Building and Grounds meeting on the 12th of December. December 16th, and December gets wild because there's concerts and Christmas and holidays and all sorts of things to kind of take into consideration. But we would do some sort of community presentation that week. I'm recommending the 16th, knowing that there's conflicts. The 18th is your regular December board meeting. And I think being that timeline in there allows you to get informed. So the questions that I think you guys need to ask yourself, this basically provides 1 month for the board to consider 4 essential questions. Will we have sufficient educational and financial justification for voters? That's a question. Will we be confident in the accuracy and transparency of the project costs? As we talk about, the tension between process and, moving forward. Will our community engagement be adequate to ensure understanding and trust? And ultimately, will the project be ready for the March of 2026 warrant? You know, those are questions you need to ask yourself over the course of the next month. Before we move on to review some things, I want to express my appreciation to the SAU staff, Kathleen Murphy and Peter and the people here, Shannon, Jason, Terry, Greg, and Brian, the Amherst Select Board, the Buildings and Grounds Committee, the PTA, the parents and community members who have shared their perspectives and attended events. I appreciate the collaborations, patience, and commitment to doing what's best for our students. I also want to recognize Trident and Vanwell. We acknowledge that we wanted to move forward on the 25th of October. We had our first meeting on October 30th, and they have made some tremendous efforts and been incredibly responsive to partner with us, to give us the information we need to make decisions. I think that was a wise decision. And we've had a great, first meeting on the 30th. We had a really good, productive meeting on November 7th between Trident and Vanwell, and they are prepared to support. And I would like to kind of walk through something with you and then take some questions and things from you guys. And this next part's more kind of like a conversation. I'm gonna invite Bob, Kathleen, and Steve to kind of weigh in as we go through this. So Victor, you just kind of bear with me and slack through as we could. All right. And for me, it's this. You know, I keep going back, what drives my decision-making, whether it was as a principal or superintendent or educator, and it comes down to our task is to evolve institutions and practices that assist learning. Ultimately, that's what we're here for. And I think that's our job as an SAU. No. So key listening session takeaways, we talked about it. I think what I want, the third bullet up there, or the second and third bullet is something I really want to, I heard cost. I've heard cost since I've been in this SAU, from the first $86 million project to now. I've heard cost. I heard cost again on October 15th. I've heard cost from building and grounds members. I've heard cost from community members. I've heard cost. I really think that's what drives it. And other factors might drive it for other people. They might have second or third factors, or their priorities might be different, but a through line is cost. Right? Second is, right now, there's a sense of urgency. I sat in a meeting where someone said, hey, I demand something to be on the warrant in March of 26. And then you have another group of people saying, you know, they keep revisiting, and then you have the tension between those stakeholder groups. And then that's real. And that's for us to navigate as a board and an SAU. But I know there's a strong desire for a well-vetted, cost-effective plan. All right. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, I will tell you a funny story. Yeah, I arrived here in COVID, and Kathleen knows this. I didn't know Wilkins was downtown. I thought Wilkins was on this campus. Never mind did I know they had trailers at Amherst Elementary School. I think it was a smart decision to put them out back. I don't think it's the best educational experience for students or teachers. I really don't. And I think our teachers do a really good job. So there's something there. All right. Next slide. So goals and timeline for this group to grapple with. Present a project that recognizes the cost as priority. Present a project that reduces overall project cost. Present a project that contains significant educational student experience and improvements. And I think you need to think about cafeteria not having gym, having a separate gym for the community use. I think you need to think about bathrooms being ADA compliant. I need to think about hallways being wide enough so you can have cubbies. I need to think about counselors not having 3 desks in one room, interventionists not having 3 desks in one room, not having a construction trailer out there for, you know, meetings. And when your child is in kindergarten or first grade or second grade, and then when you go in and when they're behind in reading, and that's where you go to discuss, hey, your student might need 504s or IEPs. Instead of having space in the building, we're gonna go sit out in the This is Amherst. I don't think that that's good enough. So there's urgency to fix that. The timeline is on this group. But I do think that's the educational and student experience that we're trying to look for, and we're not gonna support anything that doesn't do those things, whether it's in 2026 or 2027. Next slide. So we brought up, this is our recommendation for right now if you wanted something in 2026. We think this gives you a chance. You know, what they would do in talking to Trident and Banwell. They get new ed specs, they design a different project, they'd have it costed out by 3 different construction management groups. Other than DEW, so 3 different ones. DEW is not part of that in the first round. And they go back to 2 conceptual plans. Is what they think is reasonable in our time frame. They are saying people are motivated right now to work a little bit, so that's why they think they can do that. Steve or Bob or Amy, any comments on that slide? Did I miss something? Okay, next slide. The grade 5 question. Steve, I want to turn this over to you because you were here when this was going down. You know, this conversation. Kathleen, please feel free to weigh in.
Sure, the upper school, lower school was actually developed with Dr. Berlusconi. If you remember, Bethany was there. We started, Christian came, was implemented Christians for a year, first year. The goal of an upper and lower middle school was to try and look at developmentally appropriate 5th and 6th, keep the counselors consistent for 5, 6, keep the assistant principal consistent 5, 6, the special education staff 5, 6. So we created a school within a school model that could run a different schedule and make sure we were developmentally appropriate along with the academic expectations. It was also trying to manage the workload and ensure that we had the right allocations of resources to each level. And speaking with Kristen and others, we think after the 30, we really think that it is an addition or a new approach that is meeting the expectation that we started 3 years ago. So it is not the same 5th grade program with a 5 through 8 than it is with a 5, 6. So there has been a change in the developmental configuration of the middle school that at least addresses some of the issues of a 5, 8, but keeps the 5, 8 intact. For what we've heard throughout the years, some of the interscholastic activities have really been connected to some of the community 5, 8. So it supports the 5, 8 interscholastic opportunity. It keeps the efficient use of space. And it is developmentally appropriate as 5, 6 schedule, and staff can be significantly or appropriately different than 7, 8. So we think we've threaded the needle there, which reduces. I'm not saying that grade 5, look, I've argued for grade 5 in multiple roles, but where we are in trying to ensure that we support the cost-effective or the cost-conscious folks and move forward with a sense of urgency. I think we can look people in the eye and say we've improved the 5th grade developmental and administration support at that school.
So Kathleen, I wanted to give you an opportunity you've been heavily involved in this conversation. And, you know, as we think about the previous slide and this slide, do you have any thoughts on what changes for you as you, at the end of the day, we enter every meeting we have. We're gonna find a solution as an Amherst community. SAU does the legwork to inform the board and the community of potential options and collaborates with the multiple stakeholder groups and subcommittees and boards. So we enter that every time. We're searching for a solution that works. And this has evolved. So you want to talk a little bit about your evolution or anything that's changed for you that, you know, so I think people want to hear.
Sure, I appreciate, I agree with a lot of what Dr. Chamberlain shared around the move to the middle school model at 6, 7, 8. I think that, I've had the opportunity to be in the district, to see that come to life and to see some of the benefits for the students that are experiencing that after a few years of the model at AMS. I think the work that the district has put in place, facilities at AMS, hearing from my colleague, Kristen they're seeing some benefit to those renovations in the classroom spaces that, the learning environment has improved in a lot of ways for students. When I look at a model that includes grades 1 through 4, I mean, I think upon reflection, I love this school, right? I think it's great. And I love having first through fourth graders here, and I think we do a tremendous job of educating them despite the quality of the facilities that we're working with. So the idea of having the same type of, the same group of students and staff to work with in a space that is better suited for the students' needs, for our educators to do their best jobs. It was kind of good to see that kind of come to life with that perspective, knowing that the fifth grade situation is, in a good place there, right? We're always constantly as administrators thinking about all students across all schools, right? Like, it's not just I worry about here, right? I worry about the students at Amherst High School. We're a team across the district to ensure those outcomes for all kids on one stage of their experience here. I think the way that we're looking at a model with 1 through 4, really having that open mindset of building core spaces, that would promote or allow for expansion in the future would be wise for the district, knowing that if we were to experience a significant increase in population and, AMS needed space, that there was the ability to add on in a way that was cost effective. We were thinking about it now already, just makes sense to me, right? So building spaces where you have the ability to still gather with that core capacity of that number, but knowing it's there and not having to build everything again to suit that need, but then building those core classrooms to just meet the needs of a smaller population of students seems to be like a really great direction the board could choose to go.
So I appreciate that, Kathleen, Steve, thank you. All right, next slide, and here's what I'm looking for tonight, we're not saying we're going 1-4. But I'm asking for permission to continue to explore a built to suit 1-4, a renovate and expand 1-4. To bring, to the board eventually, in December. There's a timeline with some outcomes for meetings. We have this meeting, we have building and grounds on the 14th. We have a 20th regular schedule, part of that regular scheduled meeting, I would say a pretty good discussion in review of the ed specs. Implications of renovate and expand and build to suit, the must-haves for this project, and determine how December looks, if people want to. Like I said, we're searching to partner with you for a solution. And I completely understand there's a variety of thought process on how to get to that solution. But at some point, I do think we need to work towards something actively and make compromises and come together as a community. So ultimately, last slide, Victor, so everyone can see, these are the questions I think you need to have answered in your own mind by December 18th, not limited to, but as we were forgetting, putting this evening or that afternoon together, we thought, those were important questions for us to have information for you guys. So with that said, I'll just turn it back over to you for comments or questions or thoughts. But I'm looking for a little bit of direction to keep this thing moving for the next month.
All right, great. So just to summarize it, it sounds like what you're looking for from the board tonight is we're not making any decisions on anything for Beth right now. We are just, Superintendent Barry is just seeking our blessing, if you will, to carry on the path that he's on. Can we go back to the timeline slide, please? With this timeline, is that right? And then at our December 18th meeting, we will have another presentation of the work that has happened to date.
Yeah.
On your timeline, and then that would be the meeting where we would be talking about what do we want to do for March 26th.
I think that's your drop. I think that's your
Right.
drop dead.
So that's what we're talking about. I just wanted to make sure I was clear and that we're all clear on what we're being asked tonight. All right, so I'll hold my thoughts, but does anyone, I have thoughts, but does anyone? Okay, Dr. Fritz, would you like to?
Okay, thanks for the information. Can you say the slides around?
Yeah,
Digest them slower.
I will.
That'd be great. Thank you. Okay. The survey results had such urgency high up, but it's just really frustrating that there wasn't, this this other we have now in November, October through December, wasn't there in April, you know, Mike, we talked about the retreat.
Yeah.
But I showed you what I wanted to accomplish in March, and then April adjusted it, and I remember saying it's too ambitious in July, and August. And here we are, you know, November, trying to do basically the same steps. So I would have liked to see this urgency earlier. So if we do this again next year, let's have a full year at this. Okay, but you're saying it has a difference. Great, okay, on the survey, the grade configuration was not a very strong side. The question that the survey asked people was something like, would the grade configuration change your vote a lot one or the other, right? That was the vote, Mike, that question?
Can't.
Something like that.
Something like
Yeah,
that.
right, it was the impact of how much that grade configuration mattered, that's what it was?
Something like
Okay, something like that. And everyone said, like, no in our room, I don't know, is it?
There's only one person who was like, said it matters.
Okay, but most of us that didn't matter, is that everyone remembered from that survey?
Yeah, in the room that I was in, it was almost unanimous that no one wanted their middle schoolers on a high school campus. That was,
Okay.
there was one person in the room of.
But it was 1-4 or 1-5, I don't think there was a lot of.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was
Okay.
no, and the room that I sat in, I feel like there was a lot of talk about 1-4, 1-5 interchangeably.
Yes, yes,
Right.
we had to, so,
Yeah.
so Mike, I just think that,
Our
I think we're-
result, we wanted it to be developmentally appropriate, but so long as we felt like we could accommodate being developmentally appropriate, that was what they were most
that's
concerned.
what I remember, okay, so I think, Mike, I think 1-4, 1-5 is. Either way is suitable to this audience, I don't think that that's a big thing, but that also means I don't think going from 1-5 to 1-4. Is a significant enough change to really win over people that were holding out for a 1-4 plan, so just be cautious that that might not be a real enough change. So, rate from strong. Just plans max, okay, you know, Principal Murphy talked a lot about the whole student there, which is really nice to hear. Actually, I always kind of knew that you did that, but I don't think I've heard you say that quite as well as you did tonight, so I thought it was great. But I think that reflects also a plan of facilities should also have all the holistic view. So what exactly is the plan for kindergarten? What is the plan for the Clark School in kindergarten? And then what is the plan for, I mean, I think something Steve mentioned 5 through 8, but Clark's is kind of hanging out there, so it'd be nice to have some more clarity on that. Mike, can you talk about these, or whoever presents the plans next? And on costs, you mentioned a big driver, and you're gonna improve that. So I wondered, when you think about costs, do you think about the whole number of the community, or do you think about $1,000 per average home? Because all the plans have been about $1,000 per average Amherst home. Because the rates were low that first year, it was a high price tag, and it was relatively low rates, it was about $1,000 per home. And then the rates went up and the prices went down, and it was still about $1,000 an average home. And then last year, same thing, $1,000, you know, very, very close. So I just want to know what metric you're using when you say cost. Are you thinking when the voters walk in there, they're seeing the cost per average home? How do you think about cost?
I think we think about it in a couple of different ways, you know? For me, I think it's an overall cost of the bond on the life of it, right? The project plus the bond, I think factor into that, I think factor into immediate impact. Maybe I'll let you weigh in on this, people want to take a little bit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think Greg's right, it's a couple ways to look at it, and the impact is gonna be based on both the cost and the rate. So we don't have yet. But as soon as we have a project cost, we'll get rates with varying terms and look at both the level debt, level principal, and you know, bring that information to the board of what we've done before. But I think, yeah, I think it's tax impact, but it's probably also total cost of the project.
And there's a cost of doing nothing, because it, you know, increases the need, right? You've got bond rate risk and you've got construction escalation costs. And the cost of kids being educated in, I forget the word you used. Lack of quality, so you got a phrase that I have to use. But, so that's the cost, right? The current student experience is cost, you have bond rate risk, unfortunately, what we're down, that could be right either way. We also have construction escalation costs. And I'm sure our OPM would be able to present what the last recent time of cost escalation is, so the board can factor that in the decision, longer the wait, longer the.
Okay, all right. Anyone else?
Brent?
Sure, I'll jump in. I like your thought process with Clark. I mean, I think we've all probably considered that or talked about it. And I don't know if at some point maybe we can have a conversation with the OPM or maybe just future plans of if you can bring in a new building, can it be easily expanded to, you know, bring in Clark, because obviously the footprint's less than the inspiration.
You bring kindergarten up.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that would be a cost saving in the long run, but one thing I heard during the, you know, the meeting in my room was a lot of, I think Mike said urgency. People realize that the longer you wait, right, the cost is gonna keep going up because of inflation, construction projects, materials, all those things. So I did hear that a lot. So I guess one thing I would say to the 1.4, 1.5 argument, and I was very much so a 1.5 person. I think the 1.4 could possibly bring that cost down, and I think as us trying to make it more palatable for everybody, more fiscally responsible, I think it's definitely a good option. I like that idea. Am I correct when you say two projects, Mike, that the one for rebuild and then one for brand new and one for reno? Those are the two projects that they are willing to explore?
They're willing to do what we asked of them. I'm saying what I suggested of one for, with all all the input that we got, you know, to give the board an opportunity to bring something on, you know, in March 26th, you know, to meet the needs of it, we thought the one, you know, I heard very loudly from building and grounds, multiple people on building and grounds, multiple people in the community to really dig into the renovate and expand option that, you know, was kind of presented, and then there wasn't a big gap between the renovate and expand and the built to suit. They wanted to see that explored more closely with Trident and multiple CMs. So that's why I'm bringing that as an option. And it keeps the grade configuration the same, so you have there and there. I just thought it was cleaner. I thought it helped expedite the process, but it also took into consideration, you know, the meetings at building grounds in the last couple of months and the conversations that I've had with people who have, you know, requested meetings with me, met with me. I requested a meeting with them about, you know, what they want, more information that they need to wrap their head around that, you know. I think at the end of the day, there was some doubt in the costing of the project, but, you know, previous years. And, you know, people were baffled a little bit, like, all right, you know, renovate and expand was only, you know, a few million, you know, less than a built to suit. Is that real? So what else can we do? And I think that's worth exploring. And I think there's different ways you can explore that. And I think Trident agrees in my conversations with them. I've been on the phone on a regular basis with them since, you know, October 30th and on Zooms. They think that's worth exploring too, renovate and expand option. So that's why I got
Yeah,
brought here.
no, I like it. I think it's, and I remember building and grounds having that. I think it shows the community that we're willing to, you know, do whatever we can to try to keep those costs down. So I do appreciate that. I want to recognize Dr. Chamberlain with the 5th grade stuff and the middle school team over there, because as a son in 5th grade, last year, now in 6th grade, I was dead against it. I thought it was going to be a terrible idea. He has done very well with it. You mentioned like sporting activities, things like that. He did the mountain bike club, so I got him last year hanging out with some of the older kids. He has adapted very well. So as much as I dislike the idea, and I'm sure there's a lot of community who may, you know, not want to support a 1-4 for that. I think if they get the opportunity, they'd be surprised. But and one last clarifying point, the bond last year was $720 per household in the community. That's based on average assessed value.
Ms. Bean, Mr. White?
Am I first?
Can I expect on that back form? That was the interest payment the first year only instead of 20, right?
No, it was a little, so it's all the way across.
The first year is lower than the rest, even look at that, right, Amy?
Yeah.
It is lower. So you're right, I was talking about the payment across, not the first year.
So we'll put a pin on that. Amy's looking it up. Let's carry on with the comments on the recommended timeline and we can we can tie that up in a minute. Is that good with everybody? Okay.
Right, so I think, a few things. I really appreciate the fact that I know that many around the table have felt very strongly about fifth grade for lots of different reasons. And that in a perfect world, when you think of elementary, you do think of kindergarten through fifth. That is a most traditional approach. There are definitely some benefits to letting fifth graders be the oldest kids in the building versus the youngest. We have looked a little deeper into that, and it's actually something we looked deeper into because as building and grounds, as we've had this conversation, they said, hey, show me some actual data. Let me see, does it matter? Which way does it go? And I think that in looking for that, we really did come away with it can work either way. But you have to be mindful in the way that you approach it, and you have to really have some separation. And so I think that we did the best we could with the situation, but then at this point, we really looked at some advantages. And we have looked at ways, and if we do choose to go with the 1 to 4, that part of what's on us is to help explain to the community how we are making it work and why we think that is appropriate for the students. And how we think it gives them some advantages and some opportunities. I think it's the same way that as they've looked at maybe bringing the 7th and 8th back down to Mount Vernon, they've said, what would that experience be for our students if we did it here versus we continue to do the combination with Amherst? And they've looked at it and really communicated, here's what it would look like this way, here's what it would look that way, and then let them decide, right? And so we know very much how we're making it work right now with it. And so really very clearly communicating what that looks like and why we think it's appropriate. And why we think that going forward, that it's no longer a stopgap measure, but it is a long-term measure. I think the communication is really, when it comes to tax impact, I absolutely stood the ice cream social. Brian and I were there for the ribbon cutting of the playground. And somebody said, my neighbor told me that my taxes would double if I voted for the school, so I didn't. And what they had really, I assume, said was, in the time that I've lived here, my taxes have doubled, which if you've lived here for a while, they most likely have probably even tripled, right? Like over time, they've definitely gone up. And then when I said, no, if you mind me asking, how much are your taxes now? And I can tell you, I can give you ballpark. And he was like, oh, it would have only been like 1,000. Fine, I would have done that in a heartbeat. So he hadn't taken that extra step to verify for himself. He just kind of heard hearsay, right? So I think there were a couple of tools floating around that did not come from us that let people plug in, here's the value of my home, and here's kind of what that would mean to me. If we provide some of those tools that we have vetted ourselves and make it very easy for people to see, if I choose to go with this, what does that mean to me and my household? So whatever we decide to do, I think that that piece of the equation is something we have missed in the past, and that we need to take the opportunity going forward and say, let people understand what they're really talking about. Because I know we kind of give tables and we say, here, you can extrapolate. He's like, don't make it hard for me. Give me one place I can go and get real information. And that we can all agree on, right? And so I think that if we decide to go with that, we need to do that. I think that Clark, quite honestly, it's been part of the conversation from the beginning, and a lot of people have had a lot of anxiety over doing something different with Clark. They really like that experience for their youngest kids. I know when I moved into district, I was confused at first. As I bought my house, I was only in Merrimack, right? And I purposely came to Amherst and I said, so wait, am I Clark or am I Wilkins? How does it matter which house I pick, which one I go to? They're no, it's this and it's that. And my daughter at that point actually ended up going to first grade at Clark because that was the configuration at that time. But then I ended up loving that kind of gentle beginning. And so there's really, and that building is one of, in the grand scheme, one of the more economical ones to keep moving along. It doesn't have as big a projects needed as some of the others. And so I think that keeping Clark, keeping it as the way it is, but with the thought that eventually we could add on to whatever we do for Wilkins makes sense to me. So I think that taking it out of the equation for now, keeping it as is, it's in good shape. We did a lot of work over this last summer. It's in pretty decent shape and it's working well as is. It doesn't allow a lot of opportunity for expanding, like expanded preschool, which would be lovely to do, but it serves our needs. And so I think that there is absolutely frustration that we've said, okay, we're SAU wide, but are we using every inch everywhere? And I get that. And so I think knowing that we have capacity at AMS, if we were to take any students out of that when we don't have the need capacity wise would be a difficult argument to make, right? That developmentally, if we found a way to make it appropriate, but that we don't necessarily need that space at the middle school opened up at this time. I think it would be a very hard argument to make, and I have been very much a proponent all the way along, to say yes, developmentally, fifth grade is elementary, not middle school. But I think that the school within a school model, if we can show how it's working and working well, I'm fine with keeping with that and narrowing the scope of this. Our first real success at the polls was when we narrowed the scope the first time. When we took kindergarten out of this plan here and we said, okay, it's just gonna be first or fifth. That was the first time we saw significant movement at the polls of accepting. So if we were able to narrow our focus, and the other thing that really has come, for whatever reason, trust is an earned thing, and there have been lots of reasons why we've had a lot of administration changes, a lot of this, a lot of that. So I think that having third party come in who's trusted, who knows what they're doing, and who's very focused on what they're doing. It definitely came up, my room project management came up. It did. And so I think being able to do that and take a lot of the work that was already done, it's not like you're throwing everything away, but being able to take that work, focus it, and rework part of it very thoughtfully, I am totally for being able to do very thoughtful rework with a third party who is very focused. And I think that that indeed may be that final piece of the puzzle, that kind of meets enough of all the different audiences. And I will say, we have looked at, there were some things that tied our hands a tiny bit, right? We had to have a little more idea of what was going on at Sohegan and whether or not we could even consider annex in the conversation or not. We had to find out a little bit more where Mount Vernon was and whether they still wanted to be our partners and tuition in at all, or whether they wanted to entirely walk away from that. And those negotiations are going well right now. So I think that we have some answers we didn't have before. And I think that where we're at right now, this makes a lot of sense to me. But I do need some guidance on what you would like Building and Grounds very specifically to do over the next 2 months to support this.
Thank you. So let's get Mr. White's thoughts, my thoughts on the timeline.
I just want to correct the numbers. By that,
Can we're at
think it's
58 and Jason and I haven't weighed in, so I will give you the opportunity to do that. I will. But I want us to stick with the question right now that we're trying to discuss, which is the timeline, and I know that this covers a lot of ground, our facility discussion. I'll let you do that. Let Jason, let's get the timeline first, and then I'll come back to you. Mr. White.
Yeah, I mean, if I understand the ask tonight, it's just kind of, yeah, continue, doing the work and continue looking at this, and I'm open to anything. I mean, I think the real kind of meaty conversation, if I understand correctly, is December 18th, which is whether or not we're ready to go ahead and put this to the warrant. I mean, I'm not there yet, because I don't know how I could be there yet without seeing the details of what it all looks like. So I just remain open-minded. I appreciate the work that everyone's done. And I guess, I mean, happy to support the timeline and saying, yep, continue doing the work. I don't know where I'll land at the end of the day, because I don't know what I don't know yet.
Yeah, I guess I would echo Mr. White. The only caveat, because I think I would like to see those two particular scenarios costed out, whether we're going in March of 26 or March of 27. I would want to see what both of those look like. We own the plans for those designs, not 1 to 4, but something close enough. So I think we should leverage what we've already paid for as much as we can to provide, design options. My ask on this timeline, though, of my fellow board members, we had taken a vote a couple months back about not sending out a survey. However, if there's a December 16th community presentation where options are presented and we're gaining feedback, I would like feedback from more than 100 people. So I would like to, in addition, have some sort of tool that allows us to survey the broader community. So I would like to raise that question again while we're looking at this timeline, if you all would entertain that thought.
At that time or earlier than that?
Well, I don't know what the timeline, if they're gonna be ready for that, but at the same time, I think.
Okay.
Right, I just wanna give folks who, have a work trip on December 16th, an opportunity to weigh in, because I think that feedback will be critical to us to hear as part of our discussion and decision-making process on the 18th. So I would hate to miss an opportunity to hear from the community. If we're putting, like, I love the idea of a December, like, or whatever the date is, right, December 16th. I love the idea of putting some things in front of a broader group of people besides just us, besides just a subcommittee who's really been in the weeds with it, right? Like, as many people as we can. I think that's one thing we haven't done well in the past.
At our next meeting maybe then,
We can't, it's after.
next week?
Oh, our meeting next week.
Yeah, we discuss that next week.
Yeah, I don't have an issue. That's a good idea.
Do we have an agenda for next week?
It
Can we
sh-
make that this times two, like just carry this over?
It should be, well, right now, I think we need to give the superintendent our blessing on the timeline, which is simply to carry on. So that's kind of the question tonight. I added something, so apologies, and I'm happy to put that on to the 20th. But it's really just an extension of that design option.
So, and I speak to what I think after you get all the information, and I think in conversations with people, I think Trident and Banwell and their team and our team, I think we could have something, you know, where we could, on the 16th, have something that people can look at, renovate, expand, build to suit, the pros and cons, what the experience would look like. Kathleen would be handling part of that, but some of the pros and cons of the facility project would be, we can handle that. We could have Trident, you know, present the cost and how they got to that cost and the impact over the course of time. And then partner with Amy to do that. And then I think what we can do is we can put all that information out in some sort of communication where people get to weigh in. And that should be able to give the boards there, but you don't have to make that decision tonight. But I think providing people as much information on two options during that week, give the board hopefully some answers to those four essential questions that I presented earlier. I think we can make the final decision on what the 16th looks like at a later date, on the 20th. But so I'm there with you on that.
Okay, so to sew this timeline question up, is everyone, I think I got the impression from everybody that you're okay with moving forward with this timeline. We're not making any substantial decisions this evening in terms of anything happening, you know, in March or March of 26. And if someone wants to make a motion, I'm all for.
Sure, I'll make a motion to empower the SAU administration to follow the recommended timeline as presented here tonight.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Gould. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Gould, you're recognized.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just want to make sure it's clear because we've had years of confusion on pricing, which, like you said, thought there was double. Year one was, this is for the average household, so this assessed value, so I take it how it is. $256 for the year. Year two on was actually 733, so I wasn't correct, but 700.
Okay, great.
Almost. 264 and then 759.
Okay, so in the 700s, in the 200s.
The change every year, the whole point is what metric we're gonna use for costs, but did the cost change every year? Annual was the same.
No,
cost?
157 every year.
You
No,
guys.
no, the three different years we
Oh,
voted.
yeah, the first year I think it's like 9 something.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
have to.
It's changed.
Yeah.
It went down.
You guys landed on 20-year level debt.
Which
That's the
would end up being how much per household?
So 264.
Right,
year
and then-
one, and then after that, 759.
Something to that, okay, that's considered too high to get the yes that we need, if Mike's saying the cost is the big thing. The question is, are you gonna target that metric, cost per average household, as something you need to get way under 760? Is that the goal, or is it something else? That's the question.
Eventually,
I didn't mean this quote, memorize numbers over 3 years without any footnotes.
so when the cost of the project goes down, the cost of the impact assuming rates.
No, it doesn't, yeah, exactly. There's a lot more to it than just the top numbers. Half the money we're paying under the last couple plans have been, okay, not half, okay? A large cost has been to the banks, to interest payments. So that's a big deal.
Which is 20%.
Right, and it's also why that first year is, you know.
What,
So I want to ask, I mean, it is up to the answer now, but I would like to understand, when you say cost is major target, how do you think about cost?
Board
Whatever
can
you check.
control the scope of the project, or that can control interest. It can
Right.
control type of bond, look at it, the
Yeah.
bond bank.
Right.
But what is in the cost of control of the board is the decision they make on the scope.
Yes,
The scope goes K5, right, or 1-4. And then you see with the bond bank what the rate is, but within the purview of this board is the scope. So lowering the scope is what really is the beginning step, and then we'll see what happens.
And then determining the type and the time. Those are all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for all of the work. That was great. Our next item on the agenda is next steps, Building and Grounds Committee, which I think goes to your question.
So my thoughts are, Terry, you and I can work on the agenda, you and Greg, figure out what we want to discuss. I think we discussed what happened at this meeting, get some input into the considerations here, version of this presentation for them. I think an update is, on portables, I'll have an update for portables and where our thought process is there, and Roger is working with, to get some other additional quotes on portables, and so we'll talk about portables. For Friday, we'll review this, and we've plenty to talk about. Yeah. We can also talk about if there's additional meetings needed between November and December. So. Go from there.
So. One of our charges was over maintenance of the different buildings over the next 5 years. And I was, it's a very difficult conversation to have about this building without knowing which way we're leaning as a long-term solution. And that's why several things have been, when possible, they've been postponed, and then when they can't be postponed, they haven't, right? We tried not to do too many major things, and like, if we knew we were keeping outer walls, we didn't do stuff on the outside of your walls at any time, because it's going to be able to benefit you, where if you're taking those walls down in 2 years, you're not gonna wanna throw money at it, right? Unless you absolutely have to. So I think that it's been very difficult to make movement on those recommendations without a clear direction of which way we might be going. So would you like us to step aside from that charge and focus instead on how might we get portables, because we know that it could be something to help with the bottleneck for now, and something that we would probably also need that can carry over when there is any kind of construction. And would you like us to focus on that? What else would you like our focus to be?
Yeah, my recommendation, we'll discuss the full project for now. And then maybe there's AMS, we can talk about, capital improvement plan around AMS. I think I agree with you that till we have more information about here, I don't know how much we want to get into that. And right now, I'm not saying that we won't get into it
Exactly.
like in the second, beginning of next year. But like for right now, I think those two topics, and then anything around AMS, I think would be a work use of time.
Mr. White?
Yeah, just a thought, potentially an ignorant thought, as an ignorant man. So, but I don't know if it's worth, I don't even know if it's possible, but to me, it would be. Right, we put, I think, like 4 years, some number of years, it's been a project that hasn't passed. I think it'd be worthwhile knowing, like, what would a 5-year maintenance look like for this particular facility to get it up to code, to make it compliant, ADA, like, what would that look like if a project doesn't pass? And if a project doesn't pass again, I think that information would be helpful. I don't know if that is part of it,
so I think we have that.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's
have something.
what you're working against right now is the, you had October, right, as a deadline to bring some recommendations. So if I'm understanding, and correct.
I mean, it's just an idea,
But
I'm not saying it's.
It is beautiful.
you're not ready to bring any recommendations regarding like a updated CNA CIP, because to your point, we do have a 5-year plan, but I think you guys were charged with looking at it and updating it and refreshing it, making sure that it was still on track, right?
Well,
Or the things were prioritized.
It's also-
appropriately. So I would say that right, it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is you can't really do that at the moment in the way that you want to do, and you have all these other things to focus on. So from my perspective, I would be interested in the portable, whatever you've done towards that charge on portables, because I think regardless, we're probably gonna find ourselves in a situation where we're needing to do something, whether we're building a new school or not at some point. Because those portables are, decades old now, and we know that we'll need to replace them at some point in time. So from my perspective, that's what I would most immediately be interested in hearing that. And obviously any feedback on the timeline just presented this evening.
So again, in Terry's last update, you mentioned that we wanted to, the way, the building grounds, wanted to hear from the OPM before making the recommendations on those three topics. Still done that. So nothing's gonna, I mean, what's gonna change in the next meeting? There's no interaction with OPM. That was why you requested the extension to November. Now it's November, we still don't have any interaction with OPM. So are we just going to, are we done? Are we gonna like have the building grounds have any deliverables, or want to just reassign everything? I mean, it seems like the reason we postponed it is gonna get met, so I'm a little confused with what the purpose is.
So the portables was waiting on the OPM, that's new, that's
All
new.
three of us, right? You said that all.
Yeah, not
I
all,
thought you said it last time.
it was not all three.
Okay.
It was, one of them was, we did have a period without our facilities manager, and
Yes.
that had, as amazing as our administration is, they can only be so many places at once, and they were dealing with very immediate safety
Specialized
issues.
skills too, right?
Right, and so they were having to, I'll get back.
Yep.
So we can make some progress on these things. We have still made progress, and I would just like to recognize that we have an OPM in strong part now, because it was a very strong recommendation for building and grounds. And it helped sway administration to change their minds on that they had always looked at having one. It was always part of the plan post bond, but having one pre-bond was a new idea.
Mhm.
And when we really said, no, we have several professionals in that committee, and they said that in their professional lives, they had dealt with them pre-bond and in other projects where they've been a lot of value. And so I think that helped bring us something that is going to move us forward, right?
Sure.
And so we've made progress with that. I think now there's an OPM, there may be ways that we can work with them, but I think that we don't know yet what that is. Mike, is what I'm hearing from you is that knowing the depth of our bench on the committee, we may ask some of those committee members to help out and have conversations and be points of contact for an OPM as well. But we don't have anything specifically yet that they've asked of them.
Yeah, and. I think if there's a reason to bring the OPM to, a building ground meeting, we have it.
Well, at that point, the board's supposed to be signing these tasks to the subcommittee, whatever it is, so. Just wanna know if we wanna insist that happens, or should say do it without the OPM, like there has to be some sort of actionable request that you have a meeting going forward of the.
Yes, so in my mind, I would say that I think you have one meeting between now and when we're gonna be making a bigger decision,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So I think you have a pretty big walking order for that meeting, and I wanna make sure we get to public comment here before our meeting end time at 5:30, so. But for me, I think you have work to do at your next meeting, whether an OPM is there or not, like this facility, this portable charge.
Right.
Our director of facilities is back,
Okay,
right? That's a whole meeting.
okay,
Right, and I would like to hear, the temperature of the committee based on, the timeline and the work that we're in progress of that we've directed tonight.
Yes.
So that's a meeting, I mean, I don't know
Well, and to be
that
fair,
you need more than that this evening, or that we're in a position to really give you more.
exactly.
That's
I
my-
think if we would change some of what we were hoping to get from the
Yeah.
committee and clearly know what you want from their charges. And so I do think that going over this plan and getting their buy-in from this, I do think that we discussed at the last meeting whether or not if we moved in this direction, that was something they were for. And I think that universally they said, well, they may have individual thoughts on this and that. This was something that they felt they could get behind overall. And not throwing away all previous work, but taking the microscope and using that OPM and saying, let's vet what we already have and maybe some combination of it. And so we had already taken the temperature of that, and they were very much in support overall. that seemed like a direction, so I would say that they are already gonna be in support of this as well, but showing them where we're at this point. And then I think that once we have actual things to present, then having their opinion on that as well, right? And so I do think, thank you, so I think that we have enough to know that we can
Yeah, that helps a lot.
reasonably move forward with.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, thank you all. We are at 5:16 and I'd like to now move into public comment if we're all set here. Okay, great. So we'll now open the floor to public comment 2 of 2. If you're in the room and would like to address the board, please move to the center of the room. State your name and town of residence and you will have 3 minutes.
Hi, Jeannie Lou, Amherst. I feel like this is like the Inquisition, this chair sitting out here in the middle.
It is not the best.
It is a little weird.
That is.
I just, I really appreciate the fact that, that you took the feedback from the public, at the listening sessions to actually tailor, what you're planning on doing going forward. And I think it's really important. I think for me, and many of you know this, communication to the public is my screaming issue. I just want to make sure that in all the excitement and conversation about possible proposals for the future, that you make sure to include a very comprehensive plan on communicating with the public throughout this whole process. I think when I was a school board, we sort of, for some reason, thought, well, we were talking to each other and everybody else should have been paying attention and they should have been watching us on TV or listening to our meetings, but they aren't. There's what, 6 of us here. I don't know how many are on Zoom. But I really want you all to be dedicated to reaching out to the public. It's the only way this is gonna pass, is for you to keep them informed and to also solicit their feedback. The listening session was a great moment because you all had sent out flyers to every home. So you really made an effort to get people here. You're really gonna have to reach into people's houses. And I can't emphasize that enough, but I think you're on the right path. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
Anyone else from the public wishing to address the board in person before I move to online? Going once. Going twice. If you are online and would like to address the board, please raise your virtual hand.
There's no nothing.
Okay. All right, seeing no virtual hands raised, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? To adjourn. Ms. Beam has moved to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor? Thank you all.